What is up, health enthusiasts? It's Coach Lamby here for Working Weights LLC, your guide to strength, health, and all things nutrition. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Dwayne Ulrich, aka Poppy Dwirl.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And today we are going to be talking about meat versus plant-based meat alternatives. All right, Dwayne, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited about today's program. I have never in the past been really a big plant-based meat kind of guy. I used to scoff at that kind of stuff, even like at tofu combinations and stuff. But I've discovered that there's a lot you can do with it. If you can do any of the plant-based substitutes. As far as flavor, the nutrition is there. Just even miso soup. I love miso soup, and the miso soup usually has quite a bit of tofu in it. Love it. It's excellent. So I'm very excited about today.
Yeah, so I thought this would be a good topic because I had those questions about the soy meat alternatives for Patrick. And we talked about the study from Christopher Gardner.
Yes.
And I see a lot of stuff online. There's this one particular post that people keep sharing, and it's kind of like it's a white screen, and then a black line down the middle, and it has like at the top list of ingredients. And on the left side, it has the plant-based, the Beyond Burger, and it has all the ingredients. And then on the other side, it has a beef patty, and it says the ingredients are just beef. And I think a lot of people, take away from that because there are multiple ingredients or ingredients that people don't recognize, maybe they can't pronounce them, or they think that they're unnecessary, that somehow detracts from the health value of this food. And so the logical kind of conclusion is like, well, this one is just beef and this one is all of these other things to make this beef-like substance. So the beef has to be healthier for me, because it's a single ingredient. It's a whole food. This other one is going to be a processed food. And so I thought, maybe we should get into this and see, what science there actually is on the comparisons between meat and meat-based or plant-based meat alternatives. And if there's any validity to this logical deduction that people come away with, looking at something with one ingredient, which is also misleading because the number of ingredients that are actually make up beef is quite a huge list. If you think about all of the different fatty acids, all of the different amino acids, all of the different, their beef has flavor to it. There are natural flavors in beef. And so, if you were to actually do a comparison, you would see quite a long list there. But so I thought, I'll do a little dive into the literature and see what I can come up with as far as these comparisons and see if there's any validity to this.
Right. So I want to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Say, Ombudsman, there's gonna be a question that is common. I commonly hear this is that beef has things in it that our bodies need that plant-based protein doesn't have. So I don't know if you can kind of address that in a little while and just keep that in our conversation as well.
Yeah, we'll roll through the studies and then we'll get into chronometer and bring up two what are they called? 2 pages, and we'll put them side by side and we'll compare the nutritional content of those things.
Perfect. Awesome.
So let's get into this this study here, which is the one that Patrick brought up. This is by Christopher Gardner, and actually the main author here is Anthony Cremarco. Christopher Gardner would be the supervisor, and he is a professor of nutrition at Stanford University. And so they did this trial here called a randomized crossover trial on the effect of plant-based compared with animal-based meat on trimethylamine N oxide, or TMAO, and cardiovascular disease risk factors in generally healthy adults. Study with appetizing plant food / meat eating alternative trial. And they, have so sweetly nicknamed this swap meat.
Swap meat. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's the way they come up with these titles. All right. So what did they do in this study here? So what we have is we have 2 8-week diets. And people were randomized to them, and it's a crossover, so everyone served as their own control. So there was not a control group and then a plant-based group and a meat-based group. Everyone did both diets, right? And so you get to see the effect on the same person between both diets. And so that's a good way of looking at these things, because you could say if you had these 3 diets where you had a control, a plant-based and a meat-based, and, let's say that you didn't like the outcome, whichever direction it was, right? Someone could always say, like, well, we don't know what would happen to that same person on this other diet. So, we can't really trust the outcome of this. And like Patrick said, all these studies have limitations to them. They answer very, very specific questions. And so if you're not, aware of what that question is, your interpretation of what this information is giving you can be wrong. So what do we have here? So our participants, so the objective of the randomized crossover trial was to compare the effects of consuming plant-based alternative meat and those of consuming animal meat, primarily beef and pork, on emerging health risk factors, cardiometabolic risk factors, and the gut microbiome among generally healthy adults. Primary study outcome was differences in serum TMAO. Secondary outcomes were differences in fasting plasma IGF-1, metabolic markers, which would be our blood lipids, so your cholesterol panel, glucose and insulin, blood pressure, weight, and microbiota composition. Now, I am not very keen on gut health stuff, so I don't know all of these different microbiota things, but we can definitely talk about the blood lipids, the glucose, the insulin, the blood pressure, all of that stuff.
Right.
So we have 8 weeks of plant followed by 8 weeks of animal, or vice versa. And here we have our participants. And so I think that, let's see, generally healthy omnivorous adults over the age of 18 who reported typically consuming more than 1 serving of meat per day and were willing to consume around 2 servings of both plant and animals. And that's kind of important because, most people eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so you have to ask people if they're willing to consume about 2, because that would be lunch and dinner at least, right? Or you could have breakfast and lunch or breakfast and dinner. So having about 2, which, probably has a lot of external validity because that's the way a lot of people are eating. You might have, so they're looking at beef and pork. So you might have sausage or bacon or something like that in the morning, and then have a hamburger or a steak or some ground meat or something for lunch or in the evening, and then you would have some other type of meat for the other meal. Participants are required to have stable dietary history. Exclusion criteria: they couldn't weigh less than 110 pounds. They couldn't have LDL cholesterol over 190, systolic blood pressure over 160, or diastolic over 90, and then a whole bunch of other exclusion criteria.
That puts them right in the smack middle of health, basically.
Yeah.
Just generally healthy people.
Generally healthy people. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the general population. So they randomized them. 8 weeks on each diet, and there was no washout period between diets because they actually wanted to see if there was an effect on one diet over the other one. So if beef is better for you than the plant-based burger, would there be some effect if you had the beef diet first for 8 weeks and then you switch over? Would there be some kind of a protective effect there, or vice versa? So that's why there's no washout period. And then in this table right here, we can see kind of the nutritional breakdown of these things. So for our plant products, we have burger, beef crumbles, breakfast sausage, hot Italian sausage, brat sausage, grilled chicken strips, lightly seasoned chicken strips. And for our animal products, we have burger, ground beef, good morning pork, breakfast sausage, hot Italian sausage, pork bratwurst, chicken breast. So we can see right here that they're really, really doing a very good job at combining like items, right? So it's burger for burger, ground meat for ground meat, chicken for chicken, bratwurst for bratwurst, so it's a one-for-one comparison. And you can see the calorie breakdown between all of these things, all the carbohydrates, protein, and then the sodium concentrations here. And so one thing to note about the plant products is we do see that they are much, much higher in sodium than a lot of the animal-based products are. But we are going to learn something about that as we get into the study here. The beef the red meat sources were grass-fed. Okay, so nobody can complain that these were feedlot animals. That is just cheap ground beef. All right, and it was 80-20 ground beef, which is the most commonly used type of ground beef in America. Participants had to log all of their food intake for 3 days at least every other week from week 0 to 16 using chronometer. All right, so even the researchers at the great University of Stanford use chronometer here. And then we have this breakdown of ingredients. And we can see our burger. We have quite a number of ingredients here: water, pea protein isolate, expeller, pressed canola oil, refined coconut oil, blah, 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 blah. And then burger, we have beef and seasonings added by the participants. And so going back to our sodium comparison between the two, we saw that the plant-based meat alternatives were higher in sodium. However, what do most people do when they cook a burger?
Wait a minute. You just said the plant-based were higher in sodium.
They were.
The plant-based was higher in sodium.
Correct. Yes. We'll go back up here. We can see that our plant-based burger.
Wow.
At the top, massive. We have 390, and our animal-based burger is 67. But
people are flavoring it.
Seasonings added by participants. Yeah. What seasonings do people put on them? Salt. Okay, yes. All right, we have our beef crumbles compared to ground beef, breakfast sausage compared to the pork sausage, the hot Italian sausage versus hot Italian sausage, the pork-based sausage, brat versus a pork brat, or grilled chicken strips versus chicken breast, and then we have the lightly seasoned chicken strips. And so let's scroll down here. Let's get to the good stuff here. So these are metabolic characteristics. And so on our plant diet is on the left here. Our animal diet is on the right. Most of this other stuff we don't really care about. We don't care about their baseline weight and all that stuff. So it's relatively the same. And we're going to look at total cholesterol here. So in the plant side, it was 212. In the animal side, this is just once people got randomized and they had their blood work drawn, this is what the averages came out to, right? So 212 and 191, those are very similar numbers. HDL 60 and 59, that's identical. LDL 130 to 113, those are basically in the same risk category. Triglycerides are the same. So all this stuff is basically the same all the way down before diets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we're going to get down to our outcomes here. So people went on their diets. They did their plant-based diet or their animal-based diet for 8 weeks, and then they swapped. So what happened after that? So primary outcome was TMAO, and TMAO, as I looked it up, is associated with a lot of disease outcomes like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all that stuff, but it isn't in and of itself a risk factor. It's just kind of an indicator of disease. So just keeping that in mind, right? So on the plant-based side, we have a 2.7, a score of 2.7. And on the animal-based side, we have a score of 4.7. So TMAO was lower. So this marker of kind of general health was lower on the plant-based side. We have our IGF-1, which is 147.6 in the plant side versus 152 in the animal side. So a difference of about 5. That's nanograms per milliliter. We have our weight. So we have a difference of about 1 kilogram being lower in the plant-based. Insulin is a little bit higher in the plant-based side. Glucose is about identical. So insulin for the listeners was 9.2 in the plant-based and 8.8 in the animal. For all intents and purposes, that's the same. Same with glucose, 94.9 versus 94.5. That's the same. And coming down to our lipids, so LDL cholesterol, not LDL particle, was 109.9 in the plant-based side and 120.7.
That's huge.
On the animal-based side. So that's a difference of 11.
That's a big jump.
11 milligrams per deciliter. That is kind of it's not massive, right? But let's say that you currently sit with an LDL of 109. The normal range is under 100. If you were, judging by this table here, this information, if you were to swap your meat, pork, and chicken sources for these plant-based alternatives, you could get your LDL from outside of the normal range to within the normal range.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to think about. HDL, 62.5 versus 61.8. It's the same. Triglycerides are the same. Systolic and diastolic blood pressures are the same. And so why didn't the blood pressures change? Because the plant-based meats were so high in sodium. Well, people are putting salt on their food, right? So at the end of the day, what goes in your mouth, the sodium content was the same between the two diets, and that's why we don't see a difference between those. The microbiome. So the analysis of stool, 16S RNA profiles. So that 16S RNA profile is just the type of test that they do on the microbiome. Did not reveal associations of overall gut microbiota composition with diets, diet order, or TMAO production. So basically, there was really no difference in what happened in your gut in this. All right. Let me see. I'm just trying to find my thing here. So they say, although some may take issue with the lack of a washout period in the study design, in this case, it appears the absence of a washout may have been important in revealing the significant order effect. And that order effect was in the TMAO. So what they saw is that among the group getting animal first and plant second, the observed mean increase in TMAO in the animal phase decreased back to baseline concentrations within 2 weeks during the plant-based phase. So before people went on the diet, they took their TMAO levels. If you were randomized to the animal-based diet first, you saw an increase in TMAO. Once you went on the plant-based diet, that TMAO level went back to baseline. Okay? And on the plant-based phase, it had no mean increase in TMAO and no apparent effect to carry over. And yet this group was observed to have no mean increase in TMAO when shifted to the animal phase. So if you are randomized to the plant-based diet first, there was no increase in TMAO, right? Just flatline. And then when you went on to the animal-based diet, there also was no increase in TMAO. So there was this kind of protective effect of being on the plant-based diet first in this TMAO marker.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
something interesting there. Although plant-based meat products could support individuals in adhering to national global health recommendations to reduce red meat consumption, concerns have been raised about their overall health effects. Some of these products fall under the NOVA category of ultra-processed food, which have been reported to lead to weight gain compared with whole foods. However, the finding in the current study was that weight was modestly but statistically significantly lower after 8 weeks on the plant-based than the animal phase. Notably, this was observed despite no differences in reported total energy intake or physical activity levels between each phase. So even though calories were the same between diets and people didn't, start exercising more once they went plant-based, we saw this small drop of about 2.2.5 pounds in the plant-based diet. Okay. So the concerns that plant-based meat alternatives being ultra processed are going to lead to weight gain, the same way that cookies and cupcakes and stuff do.
Isn't true.
Wasn't shown in this study, right?
Yeah.
It's not to say that it can't happen. It just didn't happen in this study.
Hey, before you
yeah.
move on, can you go back to the chart where it shows a comparison side by side? No, go up to the where it shows the calories.
Oh yeah.
There. So just look at the kilocalories there. So the plant-based, if I'm reading this correctly, then look at the calories on like the animal-based products, burgers 293, ground beef 293, but like the plant-based burgers 250, beef crumbles 90. So with the exception of like the ground beef and the beef crumbles on the plant-based, all the rest of those are pretty close in calories.
Yeah.
But the thing that stands out, I'm sorry, but the thing that stands out the most to me is, and I think it's a big deal, is that 10 or 11 change in LDL. That's to me, that's significant. If somebody's over, like you said earlier, if somebody's over and they want to get their LDL down, that's a good way to do it. Even if you just start integrating that into your diet, like if you did that for a 6 or 8 week period, and then just start integrating the plant-based into your diet, I think that's a huge health boost. I didn't mean to sidetrack you, but
yeah, no.
To me, I'm taking that away right now. So
yeah,
that's good. Sorry.
Yep, absolutely. Go back down to where we were. Okay, so and then last but not least here, so until now, there has been a paucity of data upon which to evaluate these claims. This study found several beneficial effects and no adverse effects from the consumption of plant-based meats.
Right.
The interesting order effect observed for TMAO reinforces prior findings about the microbiome's potential personalization effects and warrants further study. So this kind of goes back, if we think about what Patrick told us, it's kind of like, it's not just that. And I brought this up before too. So we think of ultra processed foods as just a blanket unhealthy category. But when we consider things like whey protein or casein protein or tofu or even yogurt is considered to be a ultra processed food.
Wow.
Or at least highly processed. But those foods we would find to be quite health promoting, right?
Yes.
So it isn't just that something can be categorized as having a degree of processing, or that it has, a list of ingredients that someone may object with, but it really can come down to, as far as health outcomes, the health benefits that each of those ingredients provides a person with.
Right.
So
yep.
based on this study, I think that it would be reasonable to conclude that a person, I don't think that I would recommend, dropping all meat and substituting these meat alternatives in that case, but some portion of your daily, weekly meat consumption could be replaced with these things, and you are probably going to see a small increase in health rather than a decrease in health.
Yeah, and like we were saying, like I was saying earlier, even if you just do that for, say, if you just do a, I don't want to say it, just a deep dive into plant-based, but if you did it for just a couple of weeks, and then replace your beef or your animal-based proteins for just a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just for me, as in I keep going back to the LDL thing. So for somebody who has to watch his cholesterol, which I do,
Yeah.
then a drop of 10 or 11 points is that's important to me. So if I do that with a dive off into plant-based proteins for just 2 weeks, and then sporadically intersperse those into my plant-based proteins. So I just wanted to say this also. I'm not advocating a brand or anything like that. And Dustin might even cut this out of the video, but what we're talking about. I mean, this is not just something that we're chatting about, but this is something that we're doing. So right there's yes. Dustin sent this to me. I know you can't really see it for the glare, but I mean, this is a product that he uses regularly, and
Yeah, the Beyond Burger.
Yeah, and I'm going up to Walmart today to pick up mine, as well as, but it's the eggs,
Just egg.
just egg,
Yeah.
and I'm working that into my diet now. So,
Yep. The egg is really good. The Beyond Burgers. So as you were saying before, earlier, like we used to not real be too keen on these plant-based meat alternatives because they
right,
really weren't that good.
right,
They were pretty terrible a long time ago, and I think that that's most people's impression of stuff because they were so bad. People probably tried it at one point. It was awful. But the technology, the production, the flavoring, everything that's gone into these things has increased just as much as your flat screen TV.
right.
And so the Beyond Burger, Beyond products, I actually don't. There's a few impossible meat things that I can tolerate, but the Beyond products I think are actually really, really good. The burgers, I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to know the difference because it doesn't taste like a beef burger, but it does taste like a really, really cheap preformed burger that you would buy. Like they come six and it's already preformed, pre-seasoned and all that stuff. It's the cheap meat. It does taste like that. So, making that substitution, if you were to do that, 2-3 times a week, probably going to see some small health increases.
Yeah, I agree.
And now that you bring that up, the plant-based meat alternatives that they used in that study were Beyond products. So it wasn't a whole bunch of different things. It was purely the Beyond Meat company. So we have this. Go ahead.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off. I apologize.
No worries.
So I keep going back to the tofu thing because some of the products, some of the plant-based products that I've tasted and I've had, doesn't have a huge taste. And as we saw on this study, is how the participants in the study obviously seasoned their plant-based products for flavor or whatever, obviously adding a lot of salt. And but what I found, and I keep going back to tofu because that's what I'm most experienced with, is that if in a soup or in in something that you might make like a casserole or something like that, then that tofu to me takes on the flavor of the surrounding elements in their dish. So while it may taste blandish, if you just try it, if you just eat it by itself, this is just tofu. But when you cook it, to me, it's kind of like mushrooms, how they kind of like take on the flavor of everything around it. So I've never revolted at that's a horrible word, but I've never been revolted by the flavor of tofu, Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know if that went anywhere for anybody.
The burgers, the beef crumbles, they're pretty good. The chicken nuggets actually taste like McDonald's. So I recommend you give those a try. Don't knock them.
Not going
All
to
right,
knock
so
that.
we've got this second study here, and this second study is the impact of plant-based meat alternatives on the gut microbiota of consumers, a real-world study. And in their abstract says popular plant-based meat alternative products amongst flexitarians, and flexitarians are people who are looking to cut meat products out of their diet, but they're not willing to really go like the whole food plant-based thing. They're looking for the meat alternative. Including plant-based mince, burgers, sausages, and meatballs are often perceived as low-quality, ultra-processed foods. However, we argue that the mere industrial processing of ingredients of plant origin does not make a product ultra-processed by default. And to test their hypothesis, they conducted a randomized control trial to assess the changes in the gut microbiota of a group of 20 participants who replaced several meat-containing meals per week with meals cooked with plant-based meat alternative products and compared these changes to those experienced by a size-matched control. And so they checked people's poop, and I'm sure that that's extremely fun to do. I know I definitely want to be part of that research.
Oh, yeah. No, not me.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
So getting down into this study, so they had 20 people who substituted 2 to 3 times a week some plant-based meat alternative. So we can already see like that's not a whole bunch. That's a realistic thing that you can do. So we're interested in what the outcomes are. The number of participants is low.
Yeah.
So we just keep that in mind, but they do have a control to match or a control to compare the changes in the gut microbiome. And so they go through here in the beginning a lot about the objections that a lot of people have to these plant-based meat alternatives. And they state their hypothesis, which is that they think that the health benefit of each of these individual components in these plant-based meat alternatives is going to supersede any detrimental effect that the quote-unquote ultra processing may have. Let's get this. So both groups of participants received 2 stool test kits. So how would you like to collect your own poop at home and mail that into the lab?
I'm a little
right.
blocked up
Yeah.
mentally about talking about this.
Participants in the control group received no intervention, so they just continued eating how they normally would. They were asked to keep consuming animal products, including red meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and cheese daily, i.e., they simply continued to adhere to the kind of pattern that was specified in the inclusion criteria. So I imagine people for the as they were looking for participants, some of the exclusion criteria, and it's up here somewhere, we're just not going to go through it, was that you couldn't be vegetarian, right?
Right.
So they were asked, so they provided participants with their plant-based ingredients. So they sent them their food, which is good. They were asked to cook, or they were given enough food that was sufficient to cook 1 plant-based meal per day for 14 days. And they were requested to replace a minimum of 4 animal protein-based meals with a plant-based meal per week. So 4 meals per week, not bad. So our results, participants in the intervention group were asked to report the number of meals cooked. And so the average was 5.97, so about 6 meals for week 1, 5.4, so about 5.5 meals for week 2, 5 meals for week 3, 5 meals for week 4, and the average across 4 weeks was 5.2. So people were doing, like Monday through Friday, dinner was one of these plant-based meat alternatives. Participants in the intervention group added an average of 19 grams of fiber to their weekly diet. And let's see, More than 50% of the group reported increased gas and bloating. So having that much of an increase in fiber can probably cause a little bit of gas and bloating for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And they were asked to report some of the side effects. And so some of these things were people reported being less lethargic. Constipation has improved stool consistency, more regular bowel movements. Bowel movements have increased in volume by 100%. Bowel movements more regular and tiredness after meals have disappeared. Improvement of IBS symptoms and stomach discomfort several hours after consumption.
So, as the common man ombudsman, that's just better health. That's just better body health.
Yeah. So
it sounds crazy, but that's just better. That's just better health than being packed up with.
Yeah,
I've
so
said enough.
People reported primarily improved digestion and less lethargy.
Yes.
So into the results here, one of the things that they looked at in the gut microbiome, they say it right here, one of the greatest challenges in defining a healthy gut, quote unquote, is that most of the variance, about 85% within the human microbiome, is still unaccounted for. But one of the things that they really look at is this thing called butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid, and is particularly important for the simple reason that it constitutes the main energy source for colonocytes. So colonocytes are in your colon, as the name suggests, and they help break down food. And butyrate is the primary energy source for that. And then lo and behold, we see an increase in butyrate by substituting these plant-based meat alternatives, which is probably why people saw improved digestion. Let's see. It's butyrate, again, has been associated with markers of systemic inflammation, being C-reactive protein in people living with inflammatory bowel diseases such as Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And so they did not observe a statistically significant increase in the relative abundance of any particular butyrate producing taxon. They did identify a significant increase in the butyrate production pathways only in the intervention group. And they list some of the increase in some of the gut microbes. And I don't know how to pronounce any of these things. Fecalibacterium, ruminococcosia. I'm not even going to try that. So, but they saw an increase in some of these gut microbiota, and these specific species that they saw increases in are generally linked with improved health. The plant-based meat.
Can you roll back up just a couple of paragraphs?
Uh-huh.
I want to just point this out. You may have mentioned it, but I didn't catch it. But so butyrate can also activate intestinal gluconeogenesis. Yeah. So having beneficial effects on host glucose and general homeostasis. In addition, depletion of that is linked to several non-communicable diseases such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So by consuming plant-based, you know what I'm trying to say.
Plant-based meat alternative.
Yes. Yeah. Increases butyrate, which increases the gluconeogenesis word. But all of that would serve to lower your susceptibility, or a person's susceptibility, to type 2 diabetes, obesity.
So we're really talking
that's a big deal.
We're talking about improved glycemic control.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Which lowers your risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease and other diseases linked to that.
Yep.
So the plant-based meat alternative products contained a range of soluble and insoluble fibers from chicory root, carrot, pea, and potato, including hemicellulose, pectin, lignin, and cellulose, which have been found to have a range of benefits to human health. In addition, the phytonutrients in whole pea flour, and pea protein concentrate, the base ingredients of the plant-based meat alternatives consumed by the intervention group, also contain phytonutrients such as lutein, genistein, diazein, and ferulic acid, all of which have been reported as modulating agents of the gut microbiome, favoring the growth of short-chain fatty acid metabolizing microbes. And they go on to say that an average of 5 meals per week was sufficient to elicit the positive changes that they observed. And they talk about some of the strengths and limitations here. And they say the main limitation of the study was our sample size. So again, 20 people, not huge, right? But getting down here, so they have titled paragraph 4.2, an interesting paradox. Despite the undisputed health benefits of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains and legumes, the reality is that meat and other animal products continue to be the central element of many dietary patterns and cultures around the world. As an example, a recent cross-sectional analysis using data from the UK National Diet and Nutrition Survey found that 43% of British adults, 50% men, 31% women, consumed more than the 70 grams per day of red and processed meat alone. And that 70 grams is the recommendation in the UK, without including additional poultry or fish, eggs, or dairy. So they're only talking about red meat. So 43% of British adults consume more than the recommended amount of meat, red and processed meat. And that's without including other meats, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy, other animal-based products.
So part of that, I think that you could attest to it's choice, custom, habit, and culture.
Yes, and then some part of it is knowledge.
True.
Yeah.
Lack of, or yeah.
Wow. And so,
wait! Before you say
go ahead.
So one thing we keep talking about is like, so when people talk, when the study talks about replacing 5 meals with plant-based proteins, it's like, man, that's a lot. But think about it. If a person eats 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're talking about 21 meals in a week.
21 meals. Yeah.
Changing 5 is nothing. Nothing.
That's less than 1/3.
Yes, nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah. And, I said it earlier. So if you think about it, it's just like Monday through Friday, your dinners was replaced, so for breakfast, they were still having eggs and sausage and, cheese, whatever.
Right.
And then for lunch, they were probably still having, burgers or chicken sandwiches or whatever. The case may be, fish.
Right.
And then for dinner, Monday through Friday, they were having some plant-based meat alternative. And Saturday and Sunday, still, consuming meat, still going to Texas Roadhouse and having a steak.
Absolutely.
Or some ribs.
Yep.
Right? So it's not, it's not unreasonable here.
Yeah. Exactly.
So the conclusion here, despite the limitations of a small sample size, parallel trial design, and the reliance on the 16S RNA data only, we were able to confirm that the plant-based meat alternative products provided to participants in the intervention group elicited changes in their gut microbiota that are consistent with eubiosis, i.e., a healthy gut microbiome, meaning that the occasional replacement of animal meats with plant-based meat alternative products seen in flexitarian dietary patterns may promote positive changes in the gut microbiome of consumers. So let's stop the share there. All right. So there's that's really 2 studies that I could find that were direct comparisons between meats and plant-based meat alternatives and kind of had direct outcomes. There were a few more. We don't have time to go over everything here, but there's not a lot out there. So the notion that any of these plant-based meat alternatives provide some deleterious effect on your health is not supported by any evidence. There is no evidence to support that.
Right.
The current evidence suggests that replacing some portion of your animal-based products with plant-based meat alternatives provides an increase in health. And you don't have to do it 100%, right? You don't even have to go 100% plant-based meat alternatives to see the improvement.
Right.
It can be as simple as 4 to 5. I would probably even say 3
Yes.
to 5 meals per week.
Yes. Yes. And it doesn't even have to be an extravagant, huge, giant meal. I mean, these studies they weren't advocating that you have to eat 2,000 calories of plant-based meat alternatives. It's like, no, just one meal 2 or 3 or 4 times a day, maybe 5 times. I mean, a week. 5 times a week. That's easy. That's easy. And I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to myself to increase my intake of that to like 5 times a week.
Yeah, and they're not bad. So I tell everybody, so the just egg thing, so you're looking to replace some portion of things, and people might get burnt out on the burgers and the crumbles and everything. The just egg, I recommend it to everybody. It's pretty fantastic. And I tell everybody, look, I got a $20 bill, says you can't tell it's not a real egg.
So that's funny because he sent me that product on a text message. He goes, I've got a $20 bill that says you won't really be able to tell the difference in this. I'm going, I'm on that. I'm on that bad boy right there. I'll let you know what happens.
Let's see what's going on here. All right, so let's do a direct comparison. So let's look up Beyond Burger. Beyond Meat, Beyond Burger, plant-based patties. So that's the one we want. We're going to go 4 ounces. So that gives us 246, and that's pretty much right in line with what we saw in the swap meat trial. 246 calories. Sorry, I'm going to add that to this diary. And then in our other one, and we are going to go grass-fed. Oh, hold on. There it is. Never any grass-fed ground beef 80/20.
Okay, so I was going to say, I was looking at the fat contents. For a second, I was going to go, isn't that plant-based? That fat content a little bit high? But then when you look at the animal meat, it's like it's almost exactly the same.
All right, so for 4 ounces of our 80/20 grass-fed beef, we're looking at 283 calories, 283 and a half, 27 grams of protein, and 19 grams of fat. And for our Beyond Burger here, there we go. All right, 245, let's call it 246 calories, 20 grams of protein, 4 grams of carbohydrates, and 18 and a half grams of fat. So relatively the same in fat.
Yep.
It's about 50 grams and 40 grams lower, or 40 calories lower. And it has about 7 grams of protein less than the grass-fed beef. All right. So we're going to go down here. So our plant-based burger, given our nutrition scores, all targets, we're looking at 22%. So 1 4-ounce patty provides us with 22% of all targets. Our grass-fed beef, we're looking at 28%.
How many ounces is the grass-fed?
4. So they're both 4 ounces.
Okay, perfect.
So slightly more in the all targets, not a lot, 4%. And so let's run through here. So we're looking at our grass-fed beef. So our B vitamins, pretty, it's not fantastic on a lot of them. B1 is really low, it's 4%. B2 is 15%. And this is percentage of your daily, recommended daily intake. B3 is 33%, so that's not bad. B5 is 13%, B6, 29%. Our B12 is 118%. no biotin, 17% choline. Not a lot of information on the rest of this stuff. So no vitamin E, no vitamin D, no vitamin K, no vitamin C. And this is another thing that I hear a lot from the carnivore community, is that somehow muscle meats have enough vitamin C in them to provide you, with enough not to be deficient. There's no vitamin C in these things, man.
Nope.
There's no vitamin C in muscle meats.
Nope.
Calcium 3%, iron 46%, so almost half of your daily intake of iron. Magnesium, manganese really low, phosphorus 29, selenium 42, zinc 64, and then protein, the amino acid profile of it, looks fairly good. Cysteine is about 40%. The rest of them are in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Tryptophan is in the 37%. So let's look at our plant-based burger now. As far as carbohydrates go, we got 4 grams of carbs, 2 grams of fiber. So if you're looking to get more fiber in your diet, this may be, 2 grams is not a ton, but it's a little bit more than you were getting. Really no B vitamins at all. Choline is 5%, folate 2%. We do have some vitamin E in there, and vitamin E is important because it helps with vitamin D and vitamin C absorption. And there's a little bit in there, 13% of your vitamin K, 8% of your calcium, 29% copper, 56% of your iron. So interestingly enough, the plant-based burger has more iron than the meat burger does. Magnesium 9, manganese 19, phosphorus 24, potassium 9, selenium 1, sodium is 26. So it's high in sodium, but again, you're going to salt your beef. So don't get blown out of proportion there.
The zinc number is real interesting to me.
Zinc is pretty low here, 6%. Why do you find that interesting?
Well, because it's not going to really matter if you're interspersing your plant-based meat alternative with a regular meat diet, because for a 4-ounce grass-fed beef at like 66%, so that's a lot of zinc for like a daily intake. Yeah. But most of us don't get enough zinc, and especially as we get older, it's super important for immunity and something else, DNA production, I guess. But so while that number of zinc is low on plant-based, if you're just interspersing that with your diet, it's not something to be, oh my gosh, the zinc is so low. Yeah, that's one marker out of all of these other minerals and vitamins. So
right, it's one thing.
Why I was interested. Yeah.
Yeah. So direct comparison there. So as far as our minerals are concerned, we can switch back and forth here. The iron content in the plant-based diet is about 10% higher, so a little bit more iron, but the grass-fed burger is going to have more of these minerals in it than the plant-based one does. As far as your vitamins go, the plant-based burger has more in terms of vitamins. It has less in terms of vitamins, a little bit less than the grass-fed burger. And what's really kicking butt there is the B12.
It's huge, yeah.
Right. And then when we come over here to our fats, so grass-fed burger, we can dispel this notion here about the omega-3, omega-6 ratio in grass-fed versus grain-fed. In 4 ounces of grass-fed 80-20 burger, there's 0 omega-3. There's just not enough in there. So yes, it's more than a grain-fed burger. However, the total quantity of omega-3 is insufficient. Okay. So our fats, monounsaturated fat, we have 8 grams in our grass-fed burger. Saturated fat is 8 grams. And trans fat is almost a gram. It's 0.9 in trans fats. And so there may be someone out there who says, oh, well, the trans fats in animal products are beneficial because we have CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid. And that has been shown to have some beneficial properties for digestion and gut health and other things. However, the requirement for reporting of trans fats is the non-conjugated lipids only. So this trans fat content does not include the trans fats that we would find to be beneficial. This is only the bad trans fats.
Mm.
That's the only reason they would ask people to report trans fat on a nutrition label. So people keep that in mind. Okay. But, you have a kind of a ceiling. So the recommendation is to keep trans fats as low as possible. And your recommendation is to try to stay below 5. Okay. So having one of these burgers, having that 0.9 gram of trans fat isn't going to kill you. But now we can kind of maybe understand why we see an association between red meat and cardiovascular disease. We know trans fat has an impact on cardiovascular disease, and there is, almost a gram of it in 4 ounces of this 80/20 grass-fed beef.
Right.
So this, so the fat profile of the beef is primarily, it's half monounsaturated fat and half saturated fat. And for our plant-based burger, we have 8 grams of monounsaturated fat. So the same amount of monounsaturated fat between the two. However, look at the omega-3 in the plant-based burger. 61%. 61%. Wow. Yeah, there's 1 gram of omega-3 in there. And so if we want to talk about omega-3 to omega-6 ratios, let's flip back over here. So we actually see in the grass-fed burger, omega-3 is 0, omega-6 is 3. In our plant-based burger, omega-3 is 61, omega-6 is 14. So a much, much better omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in the plant-based burger. 6 grams of saturated fat, so it's slightly lower in saturated fat. It's also the different saturated fat coming from coconut oil. And 0 grams of trans fat. We also have 0 grams of cholesterol, dietary cholesterol, in the plant-based burger, and we have 95 grams of dietary cholesterol in the grass-fed burger. And then the protein content looks very much like vegetable protein, so cysteine is quite low. So some of these are going to be lower than others. The whole profile is much, much less than the grass-fed burger. However, if you are consuming enough protein throughout the day, this is not an issue. And we can go all the way back to episode 1, where we talked about plant-based protein. And I showed that you could, if you ate nothing but beans all day and you got all of your protein in, you would not be deficient in any essential amino acid.
I remember that.
Don't let that throw you. So they're both different from one another. Okay. When we look at a direct comparison between the two, and there are benefits to both of them. So I think that is why we are seeing health improvements, is because if you are consuming, all of your protein is mainly coming from animal-based sources, and people are finding it hard to hit the recommended intakes for fruits and vegetables, by swapping some of that animal-based protein for some plant-based protein, you're getting in these other vitamins and minerals and different fatty acids that you're not getting from the animal-based protein. And I think that's probably why we're seeing those health benefits, right? Because you're getting an increase in nutrition that you weren't having before.
Right. That's awesome.
So there we have it. Since we're on Chronometer, you want to see something weird?
Sure.
You want to see something wild?
I was going to say, don't show people my Chronometer. I don't.
Yeah, we won't.
I'm not ready to. I'm not ready to put that out there.
Oh no, I don't want to do this one. Yes, I do. Okay, here we go. Clear all. I'm going to clear this. All right, so we're going to add our grass-fed beef again. Now, have you ever heard that grass-fed beef or beef in general, animal products are the most nutritious food, the most nutrient dense?
I
You ever
have
heard that?
heard that. I have heard that.
Okay.
I've kind of heard all my life. I've heard that.
We're going to dispel this notion right now. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do this two ways. We're going to do it by calorie and we're going to do it by weight, by gram. So we're going to do 100. Oh, I found out what those balloons are. So you
I was
saw
going to say,
them,
did
right?
you just see the balloons?
So the software update has something where if you like, oh, I think if I do a heart, look at that.
Oh my God.
So I have to go in and
wow.
I have to go in and figure out how to turn that off. But that's why
funny.
it was happening. The software update does it automatically. All right, so we're going to do this first by calorie. So we're going to look for 100 calories in this grass-fed beef. Okay, so 100 calories. We're going to add that to the diet. 100 calories of our grass-fed ground beef. And we're going to remove our plant-based burger. So I want you to think about something that we would think would not be nutritious. I'm going to do broccoli.
Okay, that's pretty neutral.
Cooked from frozen.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, so 100 grams of frozen broccoli, or 100 calories. So we have 100 calories of grass-fed beef, and we're going to look to our nutrition scores. All targets, 10%. You ready for this? Broccoli, 100 calories from broccoli. All targets, 18%. Want to see something that's really going to blow your mind?
I'm still processing what you just told me.
Our grass-fed beef, 100 calories, is 9.5 grams of protein. And our broccoli is 11.1.
For 100?
100 calories. Now, mind you, 100 calories of broccoli is 358 grams. That's a lot of broccoli. However, the notion that on a calorie per calorie basis, grass-fed beef is the most nutrient dense food you could eat is false. On a calorie per calorie basis, broccoli is more nutritious than beef. All right, you ready
just
for
based on calories?
Just based on calories. Ready for mind blow number 2?
There's smoke coming out of my ears right now.
So we're going to do this on a gram basis. So we're going to do 100 grams of grass-fed beef. That gives us 250 calories. We're going to go back to our broccoli. We're going to remove our broccoli.
Do not.
We're going to add Lucky Charms.
You're kidding me.
100 grams of Lucky Charms. That gives us 396 calories. All right. So quite a bit more in calories, but let's go to, so 100 grams, so gram per gram basis. 100 grams of grass-fed beef provides us with 25% of all targets. That's not bad. That's a quarter, right? Our Lucky Charms, 100 grams, is 26.
I don't even know what to say.
And then we often, red meat is loaded with iron, right? So our grass-fed beef is 40%. 100 grams of it would be 40% of your daily intake for iron. Lucky Charms, 124%. Now, the Lucky Charms is much, much lower in protein. So 8 grams versus 24. However, we're not just looking at protein here, right? Nutrient dense would be all nutrients. As much nutrition as you could be provided. Protein is not your only source of nutrition. It's all these other things combined. And Lucky Charms provides 1% more daily nutrition. on a gram per gram basis.
There's got to be something bad about eating Lucky Charms like that.
Yeah, I don't recommend eating 100
Ugh,
grams of Lucky Charms every day, but
I'm going, oh my gosh. I, okay, so as the common man ombudsman for the third time in this session, I've just always been under the impression that eating lots of cereals is not good. However, you just proved you blew my mind. I can't even finish the conversation.
so it's very easy. So the cereals, if you had somebody who has a hard time eating a lot of different foods, so there are a lot of people who struggle with eating meat or even a lot of vegetables, and so they can become nutrient deficient in certain individual things, and so that's where a lot of fortified cereals can really come in handy because a cup of Cheerios, like one cup of Lucky Charms can provide a lot of the vitamins and minerals that people are missing. And it's not a whole bunch, it's not a high volume of food, so people can consume it very easily. It's very easily digested because it's already highly processed. So again, compared to what, right? In conjunction with what and why are we using it? So ultra processed food does not always equal detriments in health. One of these things, so you and I both know lots of people who have had cancer and have had to go through chemo.
Right.
And one of the things with getting chemotherapy or radiation is a loss in appetite. And, people your doctors are going to be really concerned about wasting.
Yes.
And for many of those patients, it's just about getting calories in. It doesn't matter where they come from. And so having the fortified nutrition from things like these cereals and bread and plant-based milks. So plant-based milks are soy milk, oat milk, all that stuff. Those are usually fortified with vitamins and minerals. And those are easy ways for people to get in, a lot of that nutrition to not become single nutrient deficient as they're going through these processes and get in the calories that they need, total calories. So it's not always bad.
That's just I'm not often speechless.
It's kind of it can throw you for a loop the first time you see that.
As the general guy, I mean, trying to have a healthy diet and eat healthy, cereal. I'll be honest, I cut cereal out of my diet. Period. I just don't eat cereal.
Yeah,
and
I mean that would be the recommendation. I'm certainly not advocating that people stop eating their ground beef and start eating Lucky Charms instead. Don't think that that's the takeaway from it. So the comparison there was really just to
right, but going
to get at the notion that it's the most nutrient dense food.
Right, but going to, like you were saying, about people who might be in a medical regime where it's killing their appetite, or they're having trouble just getting calories in, that wouldn't have even been my first thought, is to have them eat cereal. But it's like, there are worse things than eating some cereal every couple of days or so. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, I'm staggered. I'm not going to replace my beef with Lucky Charms, but under certain circumstances, there are worse things. Wow.
Yep. All right. So we've gone through the plant-based meat alternatives.
Yep.
And we've kind of addressed the notion that they are unhealthy for you just because of the number of ingredients, the type of ingredient, or the degree of processing. So that isn't true. And if you were to replace, 3 to 5 servings of animal-based protein with a plant-based meat alternative, you are more than likely going to see health improvements.
Yes.
So
Yes.
don't be afraid of them. They are good.
And I'm going to get back to you on the egg thing because
Get back to me on the egg. I really like that just egg. I'm super stoked that the first time I tried it, I was pretty hesitant because most of the egg substitutes that you get are just not great.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying things to have recommendations for people. So the more tools you have in your tool chest, the more equipped you are to succeed. And so I'm always trying new stuff. And when I tried that, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a staple in my diet. That's
awesome." I've
It's
had
really
eggs.
good.
I've had egg substitutes before, and they were like, "Ugh." So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Not good. All right.
All
Well,
right, man.
let's we'll end this one. As always, I hope somebody took something away. Dwayne, I already knew I blew your mind.
Yeah. I'm gonna need oxygen in here.
Oxygen. All right. So everybody have a great week. We want to thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you
Lamby
next time.
out.